it's Alex here. Welcome to my vlog. For those of you who are not familiar with me, I'm a blogger who spent the first half of my life growing up in Singapore and the second half of my life in Europe. In my vlog, I will be doing a series comparing and contrasting different aspects of life in the East and in the West. So whether you're living in Singapore or in the West, I hope this will be educational and interesting for you. Today, I'm going to compare the political systems in the UK and in Singapore. Now, the first big difference between the UK and Singapore is the balance of power. In Singapore, the PAP has always been the party in charge, whilst in the UK, the balance of power is held between the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, who are also known as the Tories. Our current Prime Minister David Cameron is a Tory, and before him, the last two Prime Ministers Gordon Brown and Tony Blair were Labour. These two parties take turns being the party in power and the party in opposition. The minor parties in both Singapore and the UK tend to attract the protest votes from people who are not happy with the government. The big difference is that in Singapore, with the sole exception of the Workers' Party, none of the opposition parties currently actually have a seat in Parliament, whereas in the UK, the minor parties are a force to be reckoned with. Our current government is a coalition between the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats, who are a minor party. Our Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg is the leader of the Lib Dems, and many minor parties actually do win seats in Parliament and local councils. Another big difference between the UK and Singapore is the way politics can divide people. In Singapore, there are basically two camps of people, those who support the PAP and those who don't. And these two groups do not get along. What? You voted for the PAP? But I thought you said... Never mind. Your opinion doesn't matter because you are dead to me. Whereas in the UK, politics doesn't divide people as much. Don't get me wrong, people do have strong political opinions, but I would never unfriend someone on Facebook just because they didn't vote for the same party as I did. This is because personality actually plays a very big part in British politics, another area where we're radically different from Singapore. There is a far more showbiz aspect to British politics. Prime-time comedy programs like the BBC's Have I Got News For You, Room 101 and Mock the Week, along with Channel 4's 10 O'Clock Live, constantly attracts a steady stream of politicians as guests. And yes, these politicians are expected to be funny, witty and entertaining on these programs. And to be fair, most of them can be quite entertaining on TV. Part of the reason why Boris Johnson was elected as Mayor of London was because he was very funny and engaging on BBC's Have I Got News For You. So it is possible to like a politician without liking his or her party because personality plays such an important role in the political process. In sharp contrast, Singaporean politicians tend to be very, very bland. Singaporeans don't really care if their politicians are interesting or funny. They tend to vote for the party rather than for the individual. Maybe it's because it's a cultural thing where politicians in Singapore are expected to be dignified rather than entertaining. But politicians know that many of the voters in Singapore would have made up their minds whom to vote for before they even open their mouths. So politicians are chosen for reasons other than their public speaking skills or their charisma. Hence, you end up with politicians who may be capable and intelligent, but just suck at public speaking. We have asked Indonesia to clarify the contradictory statements from Indonesian ministers and officials on whether Singapore-linked companies were involved in illegal activities that caused the haze. Thank you. This one not iPad. This one called Surface. Another way British politics is very different from Singaporean politics is the way the press reports politics here. In Singapore, the official media is very much controlled by the government, but thank goodness for alternative online media, which has really come a very long way in the last few years. Singaporeans visiting the UK may be rather shocked when they turn on the TV and see a Prime Minister being grilled by Jeremy Paxman or Gavin Esler on BBC's Newsnight. That would come across as really disrespectful in Singapore, like, how dare you challenge the Prime Minister like that on TV? Aren't you afraid you get into trouble? British newspapers have no qualms about being openly critical of the government, something the Brits take for granted. But again, this would never happen in Singapore in the mainstream press. Lastly, the way Singaporeans vote is very different from the way the Brits vote. In Singapore, it boils down to just one question really. Do you want to keep the PAP in power, or do you want to get rid of them? Whereas in the UK, voters tend to consider a far greater range of issues at election time. For some, it's education. For others, it's healthcare, the economy, immigration, the environment, or even some very local issues. As a British citizen, I have always voted for the Liberal Democrats. But then again, I'm not one of those voters who will always vote for the same party regardless of what they do. My vote is up for grabs at the next election, and I expect my politicians to work hard to earn it. There isn't one party that ticks all the boxes for me, so I'm keeping an open mind as a voter at the next election. If there are any questions that you'd like me to deal with in this format, please leave a comment below. If you liked this video, why not visit my blog, which has generated over 4 million views so far. You can find the URL in the description below. Thanks for watching!